noticed I always look to the right when I'm trying to remember something? You're supposed to look to the left, right? That's a terrible path though for me to be on because there's like no other interjections. Let's go for path E. Hello beautiful people and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new, thank you for joining us today. All you need to do is click the subscribe button below so that you can become part of our online community. I am so excited to see so many new people subscribing and joining. It feels amazing and we're nearly at that big milestone, which I'm so excited about. So thank you to everybody who has been watching, commenting, liking, subscribing and sharing recently. Honestly, it's just the most amazing feeling and I'm really grateful to connect with all of you in this space. Today we're going to be talking about a really fun topic, which is free will. So let's get started. I'm really excited to share this topic with you, and I actually have two lovely people to thank for this, Chloe and Jasmine, because Chloe recently interviewed Jasmine, who's one of my old Soul Plan students, and she's just amazing. Definitely check both of these ladies out, they're great. And they were talking about free will, and it just really inspired me to share my insights and understanding around free will. It might be something that you align with or find interesting. If you don't, that's okay. We don't have to have the same connection to the universe, to source, to the divine. We don't have to, but there's probably going to be a common thread there because there usually is. We all come from the same source, so there will be some kind of commonality amongst what we think and believe around free will. Let me just get up Google. Free will is defined as the power of acting without the constraint of fate, the ability to act at one's own discretion. So without the constraint of fate, that's kind of a really interesting way to put it actually, because it's basically saying that you feel trapped by fate. So free will's giving you this independence to act outside of fate. And also this power, it feels like it's trying to empower people, because I guess for some people, hearing that they have a destiny or a fate maybe feels quite limiting. I find it really comforting, but of course you might be different and you might find that it just feels really kind of like you're hemmed in or trapped by that idea. So in order to have free will, you have to have some kind of fate or some kind of destiny to act outside of, to be free from the constraints of. So therefore it kind of is saying that there is the will of God or your higher self or your soul or whatever, like whatever you believe in, and then there is the will of you as a human when you're incarnate on earth, which is really cool. So obviously you guys know that I work with Soul Plan and I love it. Just in case you haven't picked that up yet from all of my videos. And what I really like about Soul Plan is it brought me a lot of clarity and confirmation about why I was here. I really felt what was the purpose of my life? Why did I incarnate in this time? And I think Soul Plan just answered all of those questions and more, to be quite honest with you. So I love it. And I know from that understanding that therefore we do design the life before we come down here. And I'm not the first person to understand or to know or to agree with this. You possibly have heard of this or will agree with this yourself, but we do come down with an intention, with a goal, with a plan. What I love about Soul Plan is how much it simplifies that. But you may also work with Western or Vedic astrology, you may work with human design, I Ching or gene keys, or I'm trying to think, there's so many. There might be a system anyway that looks at your purpose and why you've come here, and you might enjoy that and connect to that and resonate with that. And if you haven't checked out Soul Plan, please do, because honestly it'll blow your mind at how simplified it is, and yet at the same time how unbelievably accurate and detailed it is. It's amazing. So essentially we are up in spirit and we decide to come down to earth. It might be that our guides or our ancestors or whomever has said it's time for you to go back down, or it might be that we have noticed certain things going on down on earth and we think, actually I'd like to go and help. So it could be that you've really chosen to put yourself in that space to come down, or it could be that you've been invited to by your guides. And this absolutely can happen either way. It doesn't actually matter so much because ultimately the end goal is the same, which is kind of the point of this video actually. Giving the game away too soon. So I almost think of it as kind of like you would have a spirit Sims to play, right? So when you play Sims, obviously you pick your character. I mean, you can do this for any game, but you pick your character. So you pick like the height, the weight, the ethnicity. You would pick the hair color, the eye color. You'd pick, you know, passions and interests, and you'd pick dislikes, and you'd pick family, etc., etc., right? And some of that will be done with other souls. So it will be, you know, people you're going to incarnate with as your family or your friends or your loved ones. They will kind of help to organize and agree with the plan of your life, you know, like times when you're going to meet each other or how your parents are going to be and the little things like that, because your plan needs to align well with your parents and your friends and your husband or your wife or your partner's plans, right? Because if you are clashing with them, it's just not going to work. So quite often you will find that it's almost synchronicity in your eyes, but really it's just that you guys have divinely planned it so that it works out nicely. So let's say your intention is to come down and to become a famous athlete. And of course there's loads of like charity and stuff that athletes do, but I just want to focus on the idea that you would become this athlete. And therefore your parents may be living in, I don't know, a certain town or country or whatever, and maybe it's too far away from where you need to go to train. Maybe it's too far away from a good coach or a good team, and maybe your parents split up and your mum or your dad moves and you have to move with one of them, or maybe your mum or your dad get another job elsewhere and so the whole family moves. And it might turn out that actually you end up living down the road from an ex-basketball player or an ex-tennis player or something, and they happen to start coaching and you can connect with them and they make you so much better, and then you end up having a really successful career because of it. So little things like that we do organize and plan, because obviously we're not going to leave anything to chance. Please don't think that anything is left to chance. Like even this video that I'm making today, it's not been left to chance. You know, if I hadn't heard that podcast, I might not have made this video. But of course I was meant to hear that podcast, because otherwise I wouldn't have completed part of my journey, right? I think it's really cool. So essentially, I believe literally down to every single second of every single day we plan and we spend time doing it, but obviously time is different in spirit. I like to think that I was born a day late, and I think that, to be honest, I was changing my mind about things that I wanted to do, because my soul plan, my birth name was misspelled on my birth certificate, so I have two different energies than I would have had if it had been spelled correctly. And I find that really interesting. I kind of feel like, I know me, I just imagine I was higher self leaning over the registrar being like, spell it like this. And I also think I was taking my time and I was being like, I don't know, what do I want to do? Do I definitely want to do that? Maybe I'll change my mind. So yeah, that makes me just the most typical indecisive Libran. There was never any doubt that I was going to be born a Libran, even though I am in like the last degree of Libra in Western astrology. But anyway, so that's just an example to share with you. I know that when you hear that, it therefore means that you've chosen for everything to happen to you. And I completely understand that sometimes it's quite difficult to receive that or to understand or to connect with that theory or that notion, because it's like, oh, but why would I choose these terrible things to happen? Why would I, you know, choose these parents or choose this partner or choose to have this experience? And I do genuinely believe that we do plan things, but I would say that there are some exceptions to the rule. And again, we'll get into that with talking about free will and how that can show up. But definitely from where I'm receiving my life and the insights and guidance I know I receive, I would definitely say that everything is planned. We don't leave things to chance. That's not the point. The point is to learn and to grow and to help one another. And therefore we're not just going to leave things to chance. That's my belief. You might disagree with that. You might think that we just have an overarching theme or an overarching plan. That's completely fine. That's cool if you think that. Like for me, it just is something that I've received and I understand, and it also just makes sense to me as well. And it also lines up with the fact that everything I plan never goes to plan. Because I've already planned it with my guides, with my higher self. So they're already like, no, Marilee, you're not going to go and do that. We're going to do this instead. So let's take a look at what I mean when I talk about free will and how it can show up in your life. Okay, so I've made you this very basic looking diagram to show you what I mean when I'm talking about free will. So essentially when it comes to free will, what we do is we sit down with our guides and our, you know, other souls that we're going to be incarnating with, our family, our friends, our lovers, our, you know, enemies or whatever, and we will agree when we're going to meet them and when we're going to connect with them and how things are going to go, what the relationship's going to be like, what we're going to learn from one another, what we're going to teach one another, all those different kinds of things. And then basically you have yourself at the beginning of the life over here on the left, and then your goals at the end. And I've put goals, but ultimately what I mean is the end of your life, like everything that you're going to achieve, and death is what I'm putting there. So it's kind of everything together. So I don't just mean smaller goals, but they are included, but essentially everything you want to achieve and experience plus the end of your life is what I'm talking about when I mention goals at the end there. So essentially I believe it goes all the way down from A to Z, if not more, but I've just done A to J because otherwise it looks a bit hectic. And basically we start on a path. Now it could be any of these paths I've put before you. So let's say you started on path A and you're just going along, living your life nicely. And let's say that this point where A crosses B, let's say you're like 15 at that age. That could be when your parents move to another county or country or state and you meet that amazing ex-tennis player or whatever, and they start to coach you, and then things flip onto path B for you and you find yourself going in another direction. You're still going to get to the same ending in your life. You're still going to achieve the same things. You're still going to connect with the same kind of people. Usually if you're meant to meet someone and it's fated, you will definitely meet them, even if that's just from a friendship space or an inspiring person or someone that you meet. You will definitely meet them if you're meant to. If you're not so much meant to, we can have people who are like extras, if you like. You know, if you're doing, let's say life was a show and you were the main character, then there might be some extras or some backup people. So it might be like you have lover A and then you also have lover B, C, D, E, F, G, who is similar to lover A, but it just depends on who you happen to meet first. But depending on who you meet first will depend on how you spend your time on each of these paths. So if you start on path A, let's say, and you move to path B, you're going to be going in a different direction but still reach the same space. Now this to me is basically how free will works. We have one overarching thing, which is our plan for our life, but within that we have subplots, shall we call them. So we've got like our book of our life and what we want to achieve, where we want to go, but then we've got all these subplots to allow space for free will. So that if we get to that stage and we think, actually, I can see a massive spider dropping down from the ceiling. That's gross. If we kind of get to that space and we decide, oh, do you know what, actually I don't want to do that, then that will change and put us on a different path. So let's take path C, for example. Let's say you started on path C. Let's say at the age of 30, whoa, you've got all these paths coming together because you're not sure which way to go. Maybe there's a lot of opportunities in front of you. Maybe you meet different people and maybe you just throw caution to the wind. Maybe you just think, do you know what? I'm just going to try something really different. I'm going to go traveling or I'm going to set up a business, whatever it is, but you're going to do something really different and it's going to feel really different, but ultimately you have kind of planned for it. It's like a backup plan. You know, you've thought to yourself, like, just in case I get to that stage in my life and I don't feel satisfied or I want to change something, these are things that I can do to change that. So you might be on D for a little bit and then suddenly you go up to E and then maybe you cross back down to C again and then you're going to cross over with I and you're going to still get to the same goals, still have the same kind of overarching experiences, but it might just be ever so slightly different from the initial C plan that you started off on. So I really believe that this is possible, and this to me is essentially how free will works, that we have the capacity to think, actually, I'm not going to do that, or I'm going to do this. And sometimes free will, again, it can be other people's free will. So it could be, as I said, that you started on path A and then your parents' free will meant that they quit their jobs and they just decided to move. Like, let's just say they were like, do you know what, let's go and live a life in the sun. It's too cold here. You guys will be happier in the sun. We're just going to move. So their free will together might be what takes you onto path B. But then you might still come back to path A if you change or decide something for yourself. It's really going to be an interesting opportunity. So that's really how I see it and understand it. And that's how I kind of visualize it. So I'll give you an example from my life. I met somebody in 2015 who I honestly thought was going to be the person I ended up with. I thought they were amazing and I just felt this really deep soul connection to them. I really felt like I'd just known them forever. And I was like, great, we're going to be together. In 2017, it hadn't really been going the way that I had hoped it would, shall we say. And I essentially said to him, like, look, are we still on the same page here? And he basically said no. I really feel that was a free will decision because a couple of psychics had said to me, yeah, you guys are definitely meant to be together. And I really just felt it in my gut that we were definitely meant to be together, but I felt as if he had the free will to pull away from it. So let's say I started on path H and I met this person and I thought I was going to be with them and it was looking like it was going well. And then for whatever reason, his free will said, actually, we're going to do something else instead. And ultimately that means he just jumped onto another path, which meant I went across to path I and then I went up to G, and then I'm obviously on my way to G to meeting someone else, but then maybe free will will kick in again and I'll meet someone else through F, or maybe I will stay with the person I meet in G. We don't know, we'll see. But ultimately that's what I believe happened. I genuinely believe this person and I were fated to be together as a possibility, but I also believe that this person chose to go with another timeline, shall we say. I think timeline is a good way to put it, actually. So ultimately, if this person had said, yeah, let's go for it, we would have just stuck together. But that didn't happen for whatever reason, and it's okay, because we don't just pick, well, rarely do we pick just one person to be with. We have like the backup people, and I don't mean that to sound as a derogatory thing, because it's really not. They're not even really backup people. We just have other options. So it's kind of like, you know, option A would have been that person for me, but instead option B will come in, and they're equally wonderful souls. They're equally great for whatever they will teach me, and I will teach them, and the relationship that we'll have, but just that's how things are going to go. So I think it's really interesting, and whenever somebody kind of mentions free will to me, this is how I understand it. This is what I think of it. I think of it as we start at one point, and then we have multiple subplot options to still get to the end point. You will always have birth, and you will always have death. We cannot change those. We haven't yet mastered immortality on Earth. Thank goodness, because can you imagine if Trump lived forever? But But that means that we therefore have two definites, right? They are definites. It's everything in between that is what we can jump timeline to timeline from, depending on our decisions and the other people or person's decisions as well. We have these options, so we never leave anything to chance. At no point does our soul want to leave us hanging. We haven't created this life to then be like, oh, whoops, we have nothing to look forward to and nothing planned. Like, can you imagine? It would kind of be like we planned our birthday every year for 20 years, and then when we got to 21, we were just like, oh, I forgot to plan anything. Nothing happened. Oh, not yet. That's just not how it happens. We always plan things because it's always working for our highest good. We always want our soul to grow, to evolve. And I think this also explains sometimes how things can happen to us. So let's say you started off on path F and you're going along your life nicely, and then something happens and it's quite traumatic, or it's quite difficult or upsetting. It might push you up to I to take you across that way, and maybe you'll go on to C and go down that way. But it might throw you off that timeline, and it might mean to, because maybe the timeline that you're on is really not working for you for whatever reason, or maybe the other timeline is better, or maybe it just happens. Maybe their free will is what caused it to happen. And I think that's really important to understand. Yes, we do agree to things happening to us, but we do not ever want to cause ourselves too much harm or distress. And you have to remember it in a way. Firstly, we would never pick anything we couldn't handle. And secondly, when we do choose things, we are in a space of complete unconditional love and joy and abundance and peace. So sometimes we've kind of forgotten what it feels like to be in a physical form, to experience physical things, to, you know, like have a physical life. And so when we come down here, we can be a bit like, whoa, that's more intense than I thought it was going to be. Oh my gosh. And that could be when you have a free will moment and you're like, wait a minute, I'm not going to do that. And you can also come down here and think to yourself, actually, looking around, I can really see that Earth would benefit more from X, Y, and Z than what I was going to originally do. So you might then also jump across to that timeline where you had put that as a kind of buffer plot for a potential. I think it's really interesting, and I think it makes so much sense. And it's completely fine if you do not see free will like this, and if you think that you literally just have like beginning of life, end of life, and then you could choose anything you want in between. But I honestly just know that our soul does not leave things to chance. It cares about you too much. The amount of self-love that you'd feel if you're in just your soul form would be so different to the ego form that we're in right now. So you would definitely only choose things that you know you can handle, you know you'd be supported by others by, you know that you can connect with the right people to help you, to heal you, to move through it. But we do need to remember, as I say, that often if those things happen, it can be that the other person has had their free will. It can be whatever reason, but it ultimately is pretty much any kind of negative or toxic behavior is an act of free will. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed this video and found it interesting. Let me know in the comments below what you think about free will and how you feel it has helped you or empowered you, or maybe where it's held you back within your life. And I will see you in next week's video.